Hello everyone, and welcome to Veil of Hearts. Here, love isn't perfect. It's raw, it's complicated, and sometimes it hurts before it heals. Every story we tell peels back another layer of the heart, revealing the quiet places where love hides, breaks, and begins again. Tonight's story begins with a kiss, one that wasn't meant to be soft or sweet, but sharp enough to leave a scar. "Kiss me," Lily said, her voice steady, though her ex, Ryan, stood just a few steps away. The man beside her didn't hesitate. His hand found her waist, and under the golden lights of the ballroom, he kissed her like the world was ending. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Ryan froze, and for the first time in years, Lily didn't feel like a broken memory. She felt like power itself. The chandeliers glittered like frozen constellations above the ballroom, each crystal catching the light and scattering it across silk gowns and polished smiles. Laughter echoed through the air, the sound sweet but sharp, like champagne poured into a cut glass. Lily Hale stood near the edge of the room, perfectly still, her reflection trapped in a wall of mirrors. In the middle of that golden world, she was a quiet storm, composed, beautiful, but distant. 3 years ago, she might have belonged here. Back then, she believed in love that lasted and promises that meant something. Back then, Ryan Pierce had held her hand under these same lights and said he couldn't imagine a life without her. And then he did. He'd left her for someone else. A woman with the kind of money that bought entire futures. Overnight, Lily had gone from being someone's dream to someone's secret. From being seen to being invisible. Now, invisibility had become her armor. She smoothed the front of her black silk dress, the one she'd chosen for its simplicity, not its shine. She wasn't here as a guest tonight. She was here because her boss, Adrian Black, wanted her to be. Adrian didn't belong to this world either. He ruled it. No one really knew where he came from or how he built his empire. People whispered words like underworld, investor, power broker, never daring to say mafia, though it hung in the air every time he walked by. His presence alone could silence a room, and now, he was the reason she was standing here again, back in the same halls where her heart once broke. "Miss Hale," a voice said behind her. Low and even, the kind of tone that made people listen. She turned. Adrian stood there, sharp in a black tuxedo, dark eyes studying her like he was reading a language only he could understand. "You've been standing here for 10 minutes, he said. "If you were any more still, I'd think you were trying to disappear." A small smile touched her lips. "Maybe I am." He glanced around the room. "You don't like crowds." "I don't like pretending," she replied. "That makes 2 of us." There was something almost human in the way he said it. Soft, almost wistful. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Come," he said, offering his arm. "You don't have to hide tonight." She hesitated for a moment before taking it. The gesture was simple, but his touch carried weight. An invisible thread that pulled her back into the light she thought she'd left behind. As they walked, conversations shifted around them. People smiled too wide, laughed too loud, whispering his name like it was both a warning and a prayer. Lily could feel their stares, curiosity, envy, judgment. But she'd learned long ago that silence was stronger than defense. "Do they always look at you like that?" she asked quietly. "Only when they can't figure out how much they should fear me," Adrian said. "And me?" He looked down at her. "They're wondering what kind of woman walks beside me." Her breath caught. "And what kind is that?" "The kind who doesn't tremble." The orchestra shifted to a softer tune, low, moody, and full of unspoken longing. Around them, couples began to dance, their laughter fading beneath the music's slow rhythm. Lily's gaze wandered across the room and froze. Ryan. He was here, standing near the champagne bar, his hand resting on the waist of a woman who looked every inch the socialite. Diamonds glittering at her throat, a smile trained to perfection. Lily's heart stuttered, but her face didn't move. He hadn't seen her yet, or maybe he had, and he just didn't care. The years between them collapsed in an instant. The betrayal, the endless nights replaying the last words he said to her. "You're wonderful, Lily, but I need someone who fits my world." And now, here he was, looking exactly like he always had. Confident, untouchable, still living in that world she'd been cut out of. Adrian noticed her silence. His gaze followed hers, and in that moment, he understood without needing to ask. "Someone from before?" he said quietly. "Yes," she answered. "Someone who taught me that love has limits." Adrian's expression didn't change, but his voice did. It lowered, softer now. "Then maybe it's time you learn that it also has power." Lily turned to look at him. "Power?" He met her eyes. "The kind that makes people regret ever letting you go." For a moment, they simply stood there, the golden light wrapping around them like a secret. And somewhere across the room, Ryan finally noticed her, the woman he once broke now standing beside the man the city feared most. Their eyes met. The air shifted. The story, it seemed, had only just begun. Ryan Pierce had always known how to make an entrance. Even now, 3 years later, he still moved through a crowd, as if he owned the air people breathed. The moment he spotted Lily across the ballroom, his smile faltered just slightly, just enough for her to notice. She stood beside Adrian, calm and unshaken, her posture composed like marble. For the first time, Ryan realized she wasn't looking up at him anymore. She was looking down. He excused himself from Vanessa's side, the woman who had once replaced Lily, and crossed the room with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. "Lily Hale," he said smoothly, the kind of voice that had once made her heart skip. "It's been a while." She turned to face him, her expression polite but distant. "It has. You look different," he continued, his gaze sweeping over her gown, her poise. "New job treating you well?" Lily smiled faintly. "Better than the last one." Vanessa joined them a second later, her perfume arriving before she did. She looped her arm through Ryan's, her diamonds catching the light. "You know her, darling?" Ryan gave a short laugh. "We go way back." Then to Lily, his tone dipped with condescension. "I heard you're working as a personal assistant now. Must be quite a change from your old dreams, huh?" The words were sugar-coated poison. Once they might have cut her, but not tonight, not really, she said evenly. "I've always worked for people who believed they were more powerful than they actually were." Vanessa's smile stiffened. Ryan blinked, caught between surprise and irritation. "Still have that sharp tongue, I see." "And you still mistake arrogance for charm," Lily replied gently. The air between them tightened. People nearby pretended not to listen, though every ear tilted slightly closer. Before Ryan could find another insult, another voice entered. Deep, steady, laced with quiet dominance. "Miss Hale?" Adrian said, approaching with the kind of calm that made the world slow around him. Every eye in the room turned. He didn't rush. He didn't have to. The energy shifted with every step he took, like gravity had decided to rearrange itself around him. "Mr. Pierce," Adrian greeted, his tone cool but civil. "I don't believe we've met." Ryan straightened, forcing a smile. "Adrian Black, hard man to get a meeting with." "That's because most meetings aren't worth having," Adrian said, gaze unflinching. Vanessa laughed too loudly. "Oh, how mysterious." Adrian ignored her completely. He turned to Lily, his hand brushing lightly against the small of her back. The touch was subtle but deliberate, a quiet declaration. "You disappeared on me," he said softly. "I thought you promised one dance." Lily hesitated only for a heartbeat. "I was catching up with an old friend." Adrian's gaze flickered briefly toward Ryan. "Is that what we're calling him?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "She doesn't need you to speak for her." Adrian tilted his head, almost amused. "You're right. But I'm the one she chose to stand beside." The room held its breath. Ryan's smirk faltered. "Careful, Black. Some of us actually earned our place here." Adrian's smile never reached his eyes. "And some of us built the floor you're standing on." Silence. Then a murmur rippled through the crowd. People pretending to sip champagne while devouring every word. Lily felt her pulse hammer in her throat. Not from fear, but from something sharper. Adrian's presence was overwhelming, yes, but not suffocating. For the first time in years, someone had stood between her and the man who once made her feel small. Adrian turned to her again, his voice quieter now, almost intimate. "Shall we?" Lily blinked. "Shall we what?" He extended his hand. "Dance, before the night gets any uglier." Ryan spoke up, desperate to regain control. "You don't have to play along with him, Lily. You're better than this show." She looked at Ryan for a long moment, long enough for the past to flicker behind her eyes, long enough to realize it no longer hurt. "You're right," she said finally. "I am better. That's why I'm walking away." She placed her hand in Adrian's. As he led her toward the dance floor, the whispers followed like a shadow, each one sharper than the last. But Lily didn't hear them anymore. All she heard was the soft rhythm of the music and the quiet certainty of the man beside her. When they reached the center of the floor, Adrian leaned closer, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "He doesn't deserve another thought," he said. "He already lost me," she whispered back. "Then let's make sure he knows it." He smiled slightly, a promise in his eyes. "Oh, he'll know." Behind them, Ryan watched, fury hidden behind a tight grin. Vanessa whispered something in his ear, but he didn't respond. His gaze stayed fixed on Lily, on the woman he once dismissed, now standing in a place he could no longer reach. And as Adrian pulled her closer beneath the crystal lights, the tension in the room transformed. Electric, dangerous, beautiful. This wasn't just a dance anymore. It was the beginning of war. The orchestra shifted to a slow, haunting melody, the kind that seemed to remember every broken promise ever whispered under candlelight. Lily stood at the edge of the dance floor, the weight of the entire ballroom pressing down on her. Every gaze in the room had turned toward them, her and Adrian, the unlikely pair at the center of the most expensive secret in Miami. Adrian extended his hand, palm open, patient. "Dance with me," he said softly. She hesitated. "Everyone's watching." "Good," he murmured. "Let them." Her breath caught, not from fear, but from something dangerously close to excitement. When her fingers finally touched his, the contact felt electric, too warm, too real. He guided her into the slow rhythm, one hand finding the small of her back, the other leading with deliberate grace. She followed instinctively, her body remembering what her heart had long forgotten, how it felt to be held without doubt. Around them, the crowd blurred into gold and shadow. Conversations faded. The only sound that remained was the soft cadence of strings and the quiet synchronization of their breathing. Adrian's thumb brushed against the curve of her spine, and she shivered. His touch was possessive, but not cruel, as if he was trying to remind her that she wasn't invisible anymore. "You're trembling," he said quietly. "Maybe I'm out of practice." He smiled slightly. "Or maybe you're remembering what power feels like." She looked up at him. "You think this is power?" "No," he said. "This is control. Power is what happens when you stop caring who's watching." Her lips parted, ready to argue. But then she saw Ryan. He stood near the edge of the crowd, drink in hand, his jaw tight. Vanessa whispered something in his ear, but his eyes never left Lily. Adrian followed her gaze, and the faintest smirk curved his lips. "Ah," he murmured. The ghost of poor decisions passed. Lily's pulse quickened. "Don't. Why not?" he said, voice low but edged. Let him see what he threw away. The music swelled, and before she could answer, Adrian spun her, slow, graceful, precise, until she fell back into his arms. The movement drew the eyes of everyone in the room, including Ryan's. Their faces were close now, too close. His breath brushed her ear when he whispered, "Tell me, Lily, does he still make you hurt?" Her throat tightened. "No," she said, barely above a whisper. Adrian tilted his head, studying her. "Then what does he make you feel?" Lily hesitated. The answer came out raw, fragile. "Like I was never enough." Something flickered in Adrian's eyes, Not pity, but recognition. He drew her closer, until she could feel the steady beat of his heart beneath his shirt. "Then let's correct his mistake," he said softly. "You were always more than enough." The world seemed to still. The air thickened. Her pulse synced with the music, rising and falling like a tide she couldn't fight. She didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was her. But suddenly, his lips were on hers. Warm, certain, unapologetic. The kiss wasn't gentle. It wasn't meant to be. It was defiance, confession, revenge, and release all at once. Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. Someone dropped a glass. Ryan froze, disbelief etched into every sharp line of his face. Vanessa's painted smile shattered, but Lily didn't care. For the first time in years, she wasn't shrinking beneath anyone's gaze. She was seen. Entirely dangerously seen. Adrian's hand tightened at her waist, anchoring her as if daring the world to intervene. When he finally pulled back, the room was silent. 100 whispers suspended in midair. He leaned close, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Let him watch what he lost," he whispered. "Let him see what he'll never touch again." Lily exhaled, shaking slightly, though not from fear. Her eyes met Ryan's across the room. He looked small now. All the charm and superiority stripped away, leaving nothing but regret. For a fleeting second, she almost pitied him. Almost. Adrian stepped back just enough to meet her gaze. "Still trembling?" She gave a soft, shaky laugh. "Maybe a little." "Good," he said. "It means you're alive." The orchestra ended the song with a final swell, a sharp, beautiful note that cut through the silence like a heartbeat. Applause began hesitantly, one pair of hands, then another, until the room erupted in forced admiration, pretending the moment was art, not rebellion. Adrian bowed slightly, his composure untouched. Lily followed, though her chest still ached from the rush of everything. The eyes, the kiss, the chaos. As they walked off the dance floor, Adrian leaned closer again, voice softer now. "I'm sorry if I crossed a line." "You didn't," she said quietly. "You just erased one." He looked at her for a long moment, unreadable. "Good. Then we understand each other." Behind them, Ryan's gaze burned through the glitter and smoke, but Lily didn't look back. She didn't need to. For the first time in her life, she wasn't chasing closure. She was living it. The city never truly slept, but that night, it felt quieter, as if even Miami was holding its breath. The limousine glided through wet streets, neon lights streaking across the windows like melting stars. Inside, silence hung heavy between Lily and Adrian, the kind that only existed after something irreversible. Lily's fingers twisted the edge of her clutch. She could still feel the echo of his lips, not just the kiss, but everything it meant. It wasn't romance. It wasn't impulse. It was a declaration. A storm. Outside, cameras still flashed somewhere in the distance. Inside, the world had shrunk to 2 heartbeats and 1,000 unsaid things. Adrian sat beside her, his tie loosened, his jaw tense. For the first time, he didn't look like the man who owned empires. He looked human. "I shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. Her head turned. "Which part? The kiss or the declaration that I belong to you?" He almost smiled. "Both." Lily's voice was calm, but her pulse wasn't. "You regret it?" Adrian looked at her, really looked. The kind of gaze that stripped everything polite away. "No," he said finally. "I regret that you had to become part of my world to understand why I did it." The words landed heavy. She stared out the window, the rain streaking like tiny silver rivers. "I knew what I was doing," she said softly. "I didn't stop you." "That doesn't mean you wanted it to happen that way." Lily gave a quiet laugh. "You think I'm fragile, Adrian, that I need protecting." He leaned back, eyes still on her. "No," he said. "I think you're stronger than anyone gives you credit for. But strength doesn't mean you have to fight alone." Something in his tone disarmed her. For once there was no power in his voice, no command, just truth. They drove in silence for a while, the hum of the city fading behind them. When the car finally stopped in front of his penthouse, she didn't move. He opened the door, then turned to her. "Come upstairs." "Just for a drink," Lily hesitated. Every instinct told her to say no, but curiosity, or maybe something deeper, won. The elevator ride was silent. The city unfolded beneath them, a sea of light and motion. When the doors opened, the space felt alive. Glass walls, low lighting, the faint scent of whiskey and rain. She stepped inside, her heels soft against the marble floor. "Beautiful view," she said, walking toward the window. Adrian poured 2 drinks and joined her. "It reminds me I'm still above water," she smiled faintly. "And the night you kissed your assistant in front of half the city? That reminds me how easy it is to drown." They both laughed quietly, but it wasn't humor. It was exhaustion, understanding. Adrian handed her a glass. "To bad decisions?" She took it. "To the ones that feel right anyway." They drank. The warmth of the whiskey burned through the chill of uncertainty. She set her glass down, watching the rain dance across the glass. "People will talk," she said. "They already are. And you?" "I've been called worse things than a man in love," he said simply. The words hung in the air. Lily turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Is that what this is?" He took a step closer. "I don't play games, Lily. Not with this." Her breath hitched. "You barely know me." "I know enough," he said. "I know you don't flinch when people raise their voices. You listen before you react. You walk like you've been through hell and somehow made it look elegant." She blinked, surprised. "You've been watching me." He didn't deny it. "I notice things, especially the ones worth noticing." The silence that followed was soft, not uncomfortable, like the quiet after a confession. "You think too highly of me," she murmured. "No," he said. "You think too little of yourself." Lily looked away, eyes glinting with something she didn't want him to see. "Do you know what it's like to be left because you weren't enough?" He nodded once. "Do you know what it's like to have everything and still feel empty?" Their eyes met again. 2 different kinds of broken recognizing each other. "You said earlier that strength doesn't mean fighting alone," she said. "But being with you, it doesn't feel safe." Adrian's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That's because I'm not safe." "Then why let me stay?" "Because you don't look at me like everyone else does. You don't see the monster." She took a slow breath. "Maybe I just stopped believing in monsters." "Then believe in me," he said quietly. The space between them vanished. His hand brushed against hers, the touch so faint it felt like a question. "Adrian," she started, but her voice caught. He stopped, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Say it," he whispered. Lily searched his eyes, and found no lies there, only danger wrapped in sincerity. "You terrify me." His answer was soft, almost tender. "Good. Fear means you care about what happens next." And in that moment, she realized she did. The rain outside intensified, streaking down the glass like a curtain of silver. When he leaned in this time, he didn't kiss her. He just rested his forehead against hers, breathing the same quiet, fragile air. "Stay," he said, "just for tonight." Lily closed her eyes, her heartbeat steadying. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, headlines, rumors, regret. But right now, in this stolen silence, none of it mattered. "Okay," she whispered. "Just for tonight." But they both knew the night was far from over. Morning didn't bring peace. It brought chaos. By the time Lily opened her eyes, the sunlight that spilled across the penthouse floor wasn't warm. It was harsh, exposing. Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Dozens of missed calls, messages, notifications that refused to end. She didn't have to look to know. She already knew. The kiss, the ballroom, the man every news outlet in Miami called untouchable. Her name was everywhere now. She unlocked her phone, and the first headline hit like a slap. The kiss that broke the city, Adrian Black's mystery woman revealed. Then another. Who is Lily Hale? From forgotten assistant to Power's favorite. And another, crueler. Did she trade her soul for power? Lily set the phone down, her hands trembling slightly. The hum of the penthouse felt louder now, the distant city noise, the coffee machine hissing somewhere in the background, the sound of Adrian's voice behind a closed door. He stepped out moments later, already dressed in his suit, calm but too composed, the kind of calm that meant he was trying not to shatter something. They're running it everywhere, he said. Every outlet, every feed. It's a wildfire. I've seen it, she said softly. I can have it pulled, he offered, moving closer. Articles, videos, even the footage from the ballroom. They all have a price. Lily shook her head. You can't delete the internet, Adrian. You can't erase me from it. His jaw tightened. I can erase them. Her lips curved, sad but steady. That's not how this works. He looked at her for a long moment, then exhaled, the tension in his shoulders finally showing. They're not after you, he said. They're after me. You just make it easier. That truth stung more than she wanted to admit. By noon, her phone was still buzzing, except now it wasn't just the press. Old friends, co-workers, people she hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered her number, and among the flood of messages was one name that made her blood run cold. Ryan, we need to talk. I can help you before this gets worse. She didn't reply. But that evening, as she left the building for a breath of air, she saw him leaning against her car, like a ghost the city had conjured from her worst memories. He looked perfect, as always. Too perfect. Quite the scandal you've caused, Ryan said, pushing off the car with that old smug smile. You always did know how to make an impression. Go away, she said, voice low. He raised a brow. That's not how you talk to someone trying to help you. Help? She repeated, half laughing. You mean like last time? Ryan's smirk didn't fade. I made mistakes. But you... He gestured vaguely toward the skyline. You made headlines. Do you have any idea what people are saying about you? I don't care, she said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. You should, he said, stepping closer. Because they think you're sleeping your way into his empire. They think you sold yourself to the devil in a suit. She flinched. He saw it and smiled, satisfied. I can fix this. I can make the noise go away. I don't need your help. Ryan's voice softened. You don't get it, do you? He's using you, Lily, just like everyone else does. You think Adrian Black can love anyone? He doesn't even believe in the word. Before she could answer, another voice cut through the air. Cold, precise, lethal. She doesn't need your concern. Adrian's tone didn't rise. It didn't have to. The sound alone froze Ryan in place. Lily turned. He was standing a few feet away, his expression unreadable, eyes burning with quiet fury. Ryan's smirk returned, weaker this time. Mr. Black, he said, feigning politeness. Didn't realize you followed your employees around after hours. I don't, Adrian said. Just the ones people can't seem to leave alone. Ryan chuckled. You think she's safe with you? The press will eat her alive, and when they do, they'll drag your empire with her. Adrian stepped forward. The air changed. Then I'll burn the whole city before I let them touch her. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. Ryan's expression twisted. You really think you can protect her from all this? I don't think, Adrian said evenly. I decide. For a heartbeat, Ryan looked like he might say more. Then he caught the look in Adrian's eyes, the kind that didn't bluff, and stepped back. This isn't over, he muttered. Adrian didn't move. It is for you. Ryan turned and left, his footsteps fading into the hum of traffic and the echo of everything he'd already lost. When the noise settled, Lily finally found her voice. You shouldn't have done that. Adrian looked at her. He deserved worse. You just proved his point, she said. You think protecting me means controlling everything. But you can't protect me from the world, Adrian. He stepped closer, the anger in his eyes replaced by something raw. I'm not trying to protect you from the world, he said. I'm trying to protect the world from touching what's mine. Her breath caught. You can't keep saying that like I belong to you. His voice softened. Then tell me you don't. She hesitated, because she couldn't. The city lights reflected in his eyes, bright and dangerous. Being with me means choosing the fire, he said quietly. There's no safe version of this, no peace. Just us, against everything. Lily looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth she'd been avoiding. He wasn't offering her love that saved. He was offering love that consumed, and somehow that terrified her less than it should have. I don't want safety, she said finally. I just want to stop running. Adrian's jaw eased. Then stop. He reached for her hand, and she let him. Somewhere far below, sirens wailed, sharp, distant, inevitable. The world was already spinning out of control, but in that moment, standing in the glow of his power and her defiance, Lily realized something she couldn't take back. This wasn't a story about survival anymore. It was a story about surrender, and she had already stepped too far into the fire to turn back. For a few days, the city held its breath. Then the storm broke. Adrian's empire had always seemed untouchable, until the world decided it wasn't. Overnight, headlines changed tone. Stocks dipped. Business partners pulled back. Anonymous sources whispered about the woman who distracted him, the assistant who turned the king into a fool. Lily. Her face was everywhere, frozen in the frame of that kiss, in the reflection of flashbulbs, in every cruel headline that turned affection into ammunition, the mistress behind the empire. How love made Adrian Black bleed. She couldn't leave the apartment without being followed. Reporters camped outside her building. Neighbors whispered when she passed. At first, she tried to laugh it off, but the noise was relentless. By the end of the week, she'd stopped answering her phone. Her boss at the agency sent a brief, apologetic message. We have to let you go until this blows over. It wasn't just her job. It was her name, her peace. She stayed in Adrian's penthouse most nights, not because she wanted to hide, but because there was nowhere else to go. Still, she could feel it, the tension tightening around them like a noose. He was busier, quieter, angrier. The first time she saw him truly lose control was on the fourth night. He was standing by the window, phone pressed to his ear, voice cold as steel. No, you don't get to walk away from this deal. You made your choice when you took my money. A pause, then softer, deadlier. Then maybe I'll make sure the next time you want to invest in something, you still have something left to invest. He hung up, the sound echoing through the glass and marble. Everything's falling apart, isn't it? Lily asked quietly. He didn't look at her. Nothing I can't rebuild. But at what cost? Adrian turned, eyes sharp. You think I haven't paid enough already? She met his stare, unflinching. That's exactly what I think. You're bleeding for a fight that shouldn't exist. His jaw tightened. This isn't just about business. This is survival. And I'm the reason you're losing it. He took a step closer. Don't do that. Do what? Blame yourself for a world that feeds on gossip. You didn't create this war. She crossed her arms, voice trembling but firm. Maybe not. But I gave them the weapon. Adrian closed the distance between them, lowering his tone. If you think I regret that night, you're wrong. I don't care if you regret it, she said, her voice cracking. I care that it's destroying you. He reached out, but she pulled away. I see the headlines, Adrian. I see the board members walking out, the investors freezing accounts, the police asking questions about your name. Her voice broke. You can't protect me and your empire at the same time. You'll lose both. He was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, but the weight behind it was unbearable. Then let me lose everything else first. Lily's breath caught. You don't mean that. Yes, he said. I do. She shook her head. No, that's not love. That's suicide. The rain started outside, soft at first. Then steadier, like the city itself was trying to wash the noise away. I won't be your weakness, she said suddenly, her voice trembling. Adrian's eyes darkened. You already are. The The words hung between them, sharp and honest. She looked at him, the man she once thought was unbreakable, and realized how much of him was built from pain. "I can't stay," she whispered. "Not like this. Not when everything you are is crumbling because of me." "Don't you dare walk away," he said, stepping closer. "You think I care about losing money? I can buy back everything they take. But you—" He stopped himself, struggling for breath. "I can't replace you." She looked at him, eyes wet. "That's the problem. You shouldn't have to." "Lily, no," she said, her voice breaking now. "You need to fight this your way. Without me, I'll only make it worse." He reached for her arm. She didn't move. The thunder rolled above them, echoing off the glass. "You think walking away will fix this?" he said. "I think staying will destroy us." For a second, they just stared at each other. Two people caught between love and ruin. Then, slowly, she pulled away. "I love you," she said. "That's why I have to go." The words hit him harder than any betrayal ever could. He wanted to stop her. He wanted to drag her back, hold her until the world burned out. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because somewhere beneath all his control, he knew she was right. Lily turned toward the door. "Where will you go?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," she said. "Somewhere your name doesn't echo in every room." The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the glass like a heartbeat. She hesitated at the door, just long enough to whisper without turning back, "Don't come after me." He didn't answer. He couldn't. The door closed behind her, the sound final and hollow. Adrian stood there, motionless, the reflection of the storm flashing across the windows. His empire was cracking, his world was unraveling, and for the first time in his life, he had no plan, no weapon, no control, just loss. He walked to the window and pressed his hand against the glass. The rain blurred the skyline, turning the city into a watercolor of light and grief. Somewhere out there, she was walking through the same storm, and he could only hope she was finding her way back to herself. He closed his eyes, the city's thunder rumbling in time with his heartbeat. For years, Adrian Black had ruled through fear. Tonight, he learned what fear really was, not power slipping through his fingers, not enemies closing in, but the silence left behind by the only person who ever made him feel human. And as the rain fell harder, he finally whispered, too quietly for anyone but the storm to hear, "Come back when the world stops burning." But she was already gone. The rain didn't stop for days. It poured until the city blurred, until even the skyline looked like it was trying to forget itself. Lily left with nothing but a suitcase, and a silence she didn't know how to carry. The train station was almost empty that morning, the kind of quiet that made the world feel paused, like it was waiting for her to make a choice she wasn't ready to make. She didn't tell Adrian where she was going. Maybe because she didn't know herself. Maybe because some things needed to end without witnesses. When she arrived back in her old neighborhood, a small coastal town 2 hours north, the air smelled of salt and rain. The streets looked smaller than she remembered, like time had folded them inward. Her mother opened the door before she could knock. Lily? The sound of her name, soft, uncertain, broke something inside her. She hadn't realized how long it had been since someone said it without judgment, without expectation. Her mother didn't ask questions. She just hugged her, and Lily let herself fall into it, her face pressed against the shoulder that had once held all her childhood tears. For the first time in months, she slept without sirens outside her window, but peace didn't come easily. Every morning, the headlines still found her, not through a screen this time, but through whispers. Even in this small town, people talked. Everyone knew who she was now, the woman who kissed the devil and lived to tell about it. She tried to drown it out with routine, walking by the shore, helping her mother in the garden, pretending the world wasn't still spinning somewhere far away. But every sunset brought the same ache. She missed him. Not the man on the front page, the empire, the power, the shadow. She missed the way he said her name like it meant something, the way he looked at her like he saw both her strength and her fear, and didn't ask her to choose between them. Sometimes she caught herself turning when cars slowed by the house, expecting him. He never came, but she knew he was there. Once, late at night, she saw a black car parked across the street, headlights dimmed. She didn't need proof. She just stood by the window unseen and whispered to the darkness, "I'm fine." The car didn't move, and somehow that was enough. Meanwhile, miles away, Adrian Black's world was burning. The empire he'd built through fear and precision was collapsing under the weight of rumors and betrayal. His partners turned on him, investors fled, and the press tore apart the name that once made men hesitate. But none of that compared to the silence that filled his penthouse. Every night he stood by the same window where she'd once stood. Her reflection still burned into the glass. The city didn't feel like his anymore. Power had lost its taste. He could make 100 deals, silence 1,000 enemies. But he couldn't silence the echo of her voice when she said, "I love you." "That's why I have to go." He didn't chase her. For the first time in his life, restraint was the only form of love he could offer. Still, he made sure she was safe, quietly, invisibly. The black car parked near her house wasn't coincidence. The anonymous payments that covered her mother's medical bills weren't charity. He was still watching, still protecting, even when she didn't want him to. One afternoon, as Lily helped her mother hang laundry in the backyard, a familiar voice called from the fence. "Didn't think I'd find you in suburbia." She turned and almost laughed. It was Maya, her closest friend from her old job, wearing a raincoat and carrying 2 coffees. "Maya," Lily breathed. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," Maya said, handing her a cup. "You vanish for months, the internet explodes, and suddenly I'm drinking bad espresso 2 hours from Miami." Lily smiled for the first time in days. "You shouldn't have come." "Yeah, well, that's never stopped me before." They sat on the porch as the afternoon light softened. "So," Maya said, "you gonna tell me why you ran?" Lily sighed, because everything around him was falling apart. Because staying felt like holding a match to gasoline, and leaving felt like cutting off a limb. Maya studied her quietly. "You still love him." Lily looked down at her coffee. "Is it that obvious?" "You wear Heartbreak like it's high fashion," Maya teased, then softened. "You know, you're not the same woman you were before him." Lily gave a tired laugh. "You mean before the tabloids?" "No," Maya said. "Before you learned to fight back. Before you stopped apologizing for taking up space." Lily frowned. "I didn't fight back. I ran." "Maybe running was fighting," Maya said. "You walked away from something that could have destroyed you. That's not weakness." The words lingered. They talked until the sky darkened, the ocean in the distance catching what little light remained. When Maya finally stood to leave, she touched Lily's arm and said quietly, "You always thought strength meant surviving storms, right? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just knowing which ones are worth standing in." Lily didn't answer, but the words settled deep, like truth always does. That night, she wrote a letter. Not an apology, not a plea, just honesty. "Adrian, you once told me control is power. I think you were wrong. Power is letting go without needing to win. Power is choosing peace over pride. Maybe one day we'll find each other again. Not in a war, but in the quiet that comes after. Until then, take care of yourself. Don't come looking. I'll be fine." She never sent it, but writing it felt like breathing again. Weeks passed. The city recovered, the noise faded, the world found new scandals to devour. Ryan Pierce, meanwhile, wasn't as lucky. The same sharks he once swam with had turned on him. The company he'd inherited folded under investigation, his reputation collapsing faster than his charm could save it. For once, Lily didn't feel anger, only distance. He was part of another life, a smaller one. One morning, as she walked along the shoreline, the sky finally cleared. The storm had moved on. The air was clean, light, new. She stopped, watching the tide roll in. Calm, patient, endless. And for the first time, She didn't think of the past as something she'd lost. She thought of it as something she'd survived. The wind lifted her hair as the horizon glowed gold. Maybe strength wasn't about surviving storms, she thought. Maybe it was about knowing which ones were worth standing in. Months passed quietly. The kind of quiet that didn't ache anymore, just settled, like dust after a storm. Lily's life had become simple again. Mornings with the smell of coffee and sea breeze. Afternoons helping her mother with the shop. Evenings spent reading near the window, rain tapping softly against the glass. For the first time in years, her days were ordinary. And it was beautiful. She hadn't seen Adrian since that night. No calls, no messages, no cars waiting outside. It was as if he'd truly let her go. But some nights, when the wind carried the scent of rain and gasoline, she still thought of him. Of the way he said her name like it meant safety and danger at the same time. Of the man who had built empires but never learned how to keep someone without trying to own them. Time dulled the sharp edges, but not the memory. Then one rainy afternoon, it happened. The cafe was nearly empty, a quiet place on the corner of Harbor Street, where the windows fogged up when it rained, and the music was always a little too soft. Lily sat near the window, her book open but unread. The sky outside had turned gray, the kind of gray that promised more than drizzle. The bell above the door chimed. She didn't look up at first, until she heard it. That pause, the silence that followed him wherever he went. Her heart stilled. When she finally looked, he was standing there, rain on his shoulders, hair damp, coat darkened by the weather. Adrian Black looked less like the man who ruled a city, and more like a man who had been walking through it for too long. He saw her before she could hide her surprise. For a moment, neither of them moved. The noise of the cafe faded, replaced by something heavier, familiarity. Then he walked over. "Is this seat taken?" he asked softly. Lily hesitated, then closed her book. "It is now." He smiled, just barely. That same restrained curve she remembered, the one that never reached his eyes, but always carried truth. He sat across from her. For a long time they said nothing. The rain filled the silence for them. Finally he spoke. "You look different." She raised an eyebrow. "You always say that when you don't know what else to say." He chuckled, quiet and tired. "Maybe, or maybe it's true." She sipped her coffee. "You came a long way for small talk." "I came a long way to see if you'd still look at me the same." Her fingers tightened around the cup. "And?" He met her eyes. "You don't," she smiled faintly. "That's probably a good thing." Adrian leaned back, studying her the way he used to. Not as a possession, but as something fragile and unfamiliar. "I thought losing you would protect you," he said. His voice was low, steady, but the crack in it was unmistakable. "I was wrong." Lily looked down, tracing the rim of her cup. "You didn't lose me," she said. "You just gave me time to find myself." The words hung between them like smoke. Soft. Forgiving. Final. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere distant. "You were right to leave," he said after a moment. "Everything I touched turned to war. You were the only thing I wanted to keep clean. And yet you still came back." "I had to," he said simply. "Not to win, not to apologize, just to see you breathe again." Her throat tightened. "And now that you have?" He hesitated. "Now I can finally breathe too." They fell quiet again. The rain softened, turning the city into a watercolor. Blurred edges, quiet colors. Lily studied him. The man sitting across from her wasn't the same one she'd left behind. The power was still there, but it no longer felt sharp. There was humility now, a kind of peace that came only after losing everything. "What happened to your empire?" she asked gently. He smiled, faint and self-aware. "It's smaller now, but it's mine again. And you?" "I'm smaller too," he said. "But I think that's the point." Lily laughed softly. "That's a first." Adrian Black admitting he's human. "I had to," he said, "because you made me remember what being one felt like." Her heart pulled tight, the way it always did when he spoke too honestly. You haven't changed as much as you think." "Neither have you," he said. "You're still trying to pretend you don't care as much as you do." She looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. "You always could read me too well." He smiled, eyes softening. "And you always hated that." "Still do," she said, but her voice was warm now. They sat there, two people who had loved and broken, and somehow found their way back to the same table. There were no apologies, no grand gestures, just quiet understanding, the kind that comes when pain finally turns into peace. Adrian's gaze lingered on her hands. "You know," he said, "for the longest time I thought love meant possession, control. And now? Now I think love is just letting someone stand beside you without fear." Lily nodded slowly. "Then maybe we finally got it right." Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Light began to filter through the clouds, soft and gold. She stood first, slipping her coat over her shoulders. He rose instinctively, old habits dying slow. "So," he said, "what happens now?" Lily smiled. "Maybe nothing. Maybe that's the beauty of it." He looked at her, then extended his hand. Not a command, not an invitation. Just a quiet offering. She stared at it for a moment, then took it. Their fingers intertwined naturally, like they'd been waiting to find their way back. The world outside the cafe kept moving. Cars passing, people rushing, rain puddles reflecting the city's noise. But inside, it was still. They didn't need words. Not anymore. As they stepped out together, the doorbell chimed softly behind them. The streets shimmered with leftover rain, the air cool and alive. For the first time, they weren't running from anything. Not the past, not each other, not the world. They walked side by side, hands clasped, their reflections stretching long against the wet pavement. And when the next gust of wind carried the scent of rain and beginnings, Lily glanced at him and whispered, "Let's not make this another war." Adrian smiled. Quiet, peaceful, real. "No," he said, "just the calm after it." And together, they disappeared into the rhythm of the city, two silhouettes stepping out of the noise, into something that finally felt like peace. The next morning arrived quietly, not with noise but with light. Lily stood by the window of Adrian's penthouse, barefoot, wrapped in one of his shirts. The city below stretched out in gold and gray, half asleep under the early sun. The rain from last night had cleared, leaving the glass streaked with soft trails of silver. For once there was no tension, no sound of phones ringing, no distant echo of chaos waiting outside the door. Just the hum of the city waking up, steady, human, alive. She took a slow breath, feeling the warmth of sunlight across her face. It had been months since she'd felt this kind of stillness, not the quiet that comes after running, but the kind that stays because you've stopped needing to run. Behind her, Adrian stirred, his voice rough from sleep. "You're awake early." She turned slightly, smiling faintly. "Couldn't sleep. The city's too beautiful today." He walked toward her, barefoot as well, stopping a few feet behind. "Beautiful is a dangerous word in my world." "Maybe it's time to change that," she said softly. Adrian studied her, his expression unreadable, the same way it had always been when he didn't know how to speak what he felt. "Do you ever regret coming back?" She shook her head. "No, I think, for the first time, I stopped trying to make sense of it. Of us. Of everything." He stepped closer until his reflection merged with hers on the glass. "And what did you find?" Her answer came quietly, like the morning itself. "Peace." He smiled, and for once it wasn't sharp or cautious. It was real. "You make it sound simple." "It isn't," she said. "But maybe love isn't about finding safety. Maybe it's about finding someone who makes the chaos worth it." He let out a breath, half laugh, half surrender. "That sounds like something you'd say." "It's something you taught me," she replied. The two of them stood there for a long moment. No declarations, no promises, no need to define what they had become. Outside, life continued. Cars moved, people hurried, the city pulsed with the same restless rhythm it always had. But inside, the air was still, He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I don't know what comes next," he admitted. "Neither do I," she said. "But maybe that's okay. We don't have to own tomorrow. Just today?" She nodded. "Just today." He leaned forward, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. It wasn't the kind of kiss that claimed or promised. It was simply gratitude. "Coffee?" he asked after a moment, his tone lighter. She smiled. "Only if you let me make it this time." He raised a brow. "You mean burn it?" "See, that's the problem," she teased. "You think everything worth having has to be perfect." He laughed quietly. "And you think imperfection is the point?" "Exactly." They moved together toward the kitchen, slow, ordinary, alive. As she poured the coffee and he leaned against the counter, the city outside filled with its usual noise again, but somehow it didn't sound the same. Because this time, the chaos wasn't something to fight. It was something to live through, together. Lily placed the mug in his hand, their fingers brushing briefly. "Do you ever think we'll be normal?" Adrian chuckled. "No, but I think we'll be real." She smiled, a quiet kind of happiness settling in her chest. "That's enough," he nodded, lifting his cup in a small toast. "To real," she mirrored the gesture. "To peace." They drank, standing by the window, watching the city move below. For the first time in a long time, neither of them felt the need to fill the silence, because it wasn't empty anymore. It was full, of breath, of warmth, of something wordless and alive. And as the morning light grew stronger, spilling across the room like a quiet benediction, Lily closed her eyes and let herself simply be, no promises. No battles, just the calm after everything, and for once the silence wasn't empty. It was peace. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Veil of Hearts. Every story here is a journey of love, loss, and finding peace again. Your support helps us keep telling hearts that still believe.